So as you guys know, Dana White's Contender Series 2024 is going to be taking place later this year in August. In the middle of August, actually, is when it's going to start. And I've made videos for every single weight class of fighter that I think should be on the Contender Series this year. And just in general, fighters that I think the UFC should sign. This is the light heavyweights. And as you guys know, once again, light heavyweight is a pretty shallow division in my opinion. I think there's only like 30 fighters on the roster at light heavyweight in the UFC, so I'm sure the UFC probably wants to add a few more guys to that roster. And once again, the thing about light heavyweight is I feel like there's actually a lot of really good light heavyweight. So even then, a lot of guys I think would actually kind of find it relatively hard to make it into a very top 15 kind of run, because there are some very top guys at that weight class in the moment in the UFC. But nonetheless, I've got a bit of a list for you guys. It's not super long. It's going to start off with the returning fighters, of course, and the first one is Yusri Belgari. He did fight at 185 pounds against Marco Tulio. He lost that fight, but he's then gone on to win a couple of fights after that. As you guys know, or may not know actually, Yusri Belgari is a former kickboxer for Glory, and like Alex Pereira, he actually has a very interesting sort of kickboxing style, but it was enough to beat... No, he never beat Israel Adesanya, sorry. He lost to Adesanya twice, but he did beat Alex Pereira at one point, and he does have a win over Jason Wilness, who is an absolute kickboxing legend. Then, nonetheless, Belgari, successful kickboxing career. Once again, somewhat successful career in MMA, beaten some good guys. He's 7-3 right now, so he's got 10 fights. He's got more fights than Alex Pereira did before he signed, so let's go. The next one is Bruno Lopez, 12-1. Brenson Ribeiro fought like an absolute idiot against Brenson Ribeiro, I'll tell you that much. Because Bruno Lopez is the much better fighter out of these two. Fought like an idiot. Aside from that, he's very proven. Once again, probably is actually one of the better light heavyweights in the world right now. But you wouldn't know by the way that he fought Brenson Ribeiro. I'll move on. He should be on the show back again, though. Kaloyan Kolev is another returning fighter, of course, 12-1, pretty padded record. He did lose to Armin Petrosian on the show, but since then has fought twice, and now he's fighting for BKFC. Maybe is exclusive with them, but maybe they could make something happen since the UFC and BKFC seem to be pretty buddy-buddy. I don't know. Kaloyan Kolev, though, he's from Bulgaria. I don't know if the UFC has anyone on the roster from Bulgaria anymore, so it'll be interesting to see. Ozzy Diaz, as you guys may or may not know, Ozzy Diaz, he actually lost to Joe Pyfer on the first episode of 2022 and took a lot of time off. He's now back at 205 pounds. He defeated Chuck Campbell, who was a guy that was actually kind of making his own sort of thing happen. He has lost a few fights recently, but he beat Andy Clamp, who's actually on this list, and then he lost to Modestas Bukauskas, who actually signed to the UFC after that. Lost to Billy Alicana, who's good, beat the GOAT, Jared Vandera, and then lost to Ozzy Diaz, who is Ozzy Diaz. And I think Ozzy Diaz should come back to the show, especially if he beats Bevon Lewis, which I think he will do. So I think I would expect Ozzy Diaz to come back to the show. Now the first fighters, Artem Vakitov, and you might need to hear me out on this one because he's 2-1 in MMA, but this guy and Alex Pereira, I think they're actually friends now, but they had a pretty interesting rivalry, and he is actually the last person to defeat Alex Pereira in kickboxing in a fight which a lot of people think that he was robbed in against Alex Pereira, and then some people think that Alex Pereira was robbed in the rematch. But of course, before that, very successful career in kickboxing, lost his debut by injury, which is just kind of really sad to see. And then after that, he's just been knocking people out. Hasn't fought anybody good whatsoever. But Artem Vakitov in the UFC would be very fun. There's obviously a storyline with Alex Pereira. It does seem like now as well, now that Alex Pereira has become such a dominant champ. And honestly, just one of the greatest strikers in the UFC history, because he's now a double champion with his Glory Kickboxing Hall of Fame background. A lot of people probably now can see, if they do sign a guy that's 3-1, potentially like Artem Vakitov with this kickboxing background, I think a lot of people might just look at him and think, you know what? It kind of makes sense because Alex Pereira's gone and done it, so why could he not? Who knows? Who knows? I think there's a lot to be excited about with him. George Tokos or Tuko Tokos is a fighter who fought for Bellator at one point, and then the UFC really wanted to sign him. But they put him on Road to UFC against Zhang Mingyang. And Zhang Mingyang, as a plus 450 underdog, absolutely smoked him on the feet. Aside from that, he's gone on a bit of a win streak, beating absolutely nobody. Absolutely nobody. The UFC, for some reason, seemed really interested in signing him. So yeah, put him on the Contender Series, I guess. He's 10-3, he's not really beaten anybody good, but the UFC loves him. I don't know why, but they do. Joe Taylor, 6-0, 40 years old. What am I doing? Okay, I guess you could put him on there. Glory Kickbox, that's why, Glory Kickboxer. Sorry, guys. I create these lists over the span of like 6 months. So, anyway, Uran Satibaldiev is another guy I've got on here. 7-1 from Kyrgyzstan. Beaten decent guys. He's actually fought in the LFA recently in a main event against Bruno Assis, who's actually a good fighter in his own right. He's come over to the USA, and when these international guys come over to the USA, it's usually because they're trying to attract the attention of the UFC. Uran Satibaldiev is from Kyrgyzstan, which is a market the UFC is going to want to get more fighters from, or an area of the world so the Kyrgyzstan market can watch the UFC, and in a weight class that the UFC are going to need more fighters from. He is perfect. Haider Khan is 7-1 from England, and he is on a bit of a run right now. Hasn't really fought the best guys, but he's been fighting all over the place. Where was this FCC event? Was this in... It's in England. Okay, I got it confused with a different promotion. FCC in England, but Anthony Pettis FC would have actually been in the United States. No. When did Anthony Pettis FC go to Europe? Whatever. Haider Khan. He's a good fighter. He's a guy that the UFC is going to want to sign. He did lose to Mick Stanton, but Mick Stanton just beats every good prospect at this weight class for some reason, and middleweight as well. Haider Khan. There you go. Andy Clamp, also from England, 13-2. He defeated Ghassan Abdinabi, who fought him after taking a lot of time off by submission, and then he defeated a 6-1 opponent as well. Is a grappler. Once again, the UFC needs light heavyweights right now. Andy Clamp seems to be one of the better guys in the world. Now we've got Tai In Kim, because would it be an Artem MMA prospect video without a fighter from South Korea? Probably not. I didn't have a middleweight, which is a shame. But I do have Tai In Kim, who's knocking people out. Silly. This guy loves to knock people out, man. And then once again, he's just kind of... The thing about South Korea, I feel like there's just not a lot of light heavyweights in there. So he's been fighting at heavyweight recently. And he's just been... Dude, this guy would be perfect for the UFC. I mean, for Contender Series. Knocking out guys in 13 seconds. Knocking out guys in 25 seconds. 45-second KO. Power in the hands. He's fun. He's from South Korea. The UFC doesn't have many South Korean fighters. Could be quite fun. And also, the one South Korean fighter that they have from light heavyweight was ranked at one point. So, and now I've got Luke Fernandez. He's only 3-0, but once again, kind of like Tai In Kim, he's just absolutely dominated everybody he's fought. Went on 6-0 as an amateur, and then he's knocked out everybody that he's fought as a professional. Looks like he is finding a lot of his own success. I think he was meant to fight a very decent fighter recently in Will Dick. Yeah, that would have been a good win for him if he was to get past him, but unfortunately it was cancelled. Luke Fernandez, only 3-0, but I mean, maybe you can make something happen there. Especially if he's got a wrestling background, which I think he might. That's kind of it though. That's the list. It's a little bit sad. It's a little bit short. That's light heavyweights though. There's not that many out there, man, that aren't signed to big promotions already. But yeah, I'll see. Maybe they could bring back Murtaza Talha. But the thing is, Murtaza Talha is a middleweight. I mean, this guy is not a light heavyweight, man. Trust me. If they're bringing this guy back, it's at 185. I'll see you guys in the next one, the heavyweights.